showing them, you see, you know what you would.
He pounded a lot more than normal production.
You weren't quite sure. Want to split up some? Get it down?
Well, one week he didn't get down, but that's all right. See this one here?
Yeah. Well, you can see it in down and see where it is right there.
They're just showing the process.
Tom,
What?
you want to
flatten it?
cut it out?
Okay.
I think we just will carry it through.
Okay. You gotta cut it with this thing?
No, we just cut it
You
with
can't cut with that because you have to have a press. So the shear and the bore there. The other one up.
Yeah.
Turn that off. I'll give you that. I don't claim to be an expert on these operations because I had men that were experts on the operation. I did design work.
He needs a, needs a hammer.
Three of the main people, if guys that most of the time counting, one person, most of what he did was put pattern on it.
It's right here, Dad.
Another person did all around.
You can hook it over there.
Here's the hook. Keep coming, keep coming. There you go. Now let it go. Just hold it a minute. Got it? Yeah. Let me turn it around this way. That's it. That's where it's going to be.
This will work all right. They had my grandson here doing this for the wedding. He hit his finger with the
I saw the Band-Aid on his finger.
with the rubber hammer. Boy. I don't have the right hammer here. We need one of the more smaller.
It's over here. Okay.
Where is it?
Smaller? It's a little better?
Nope, that's.
No.
This one?
It's got one that has tapered edges.
I think there's one with somewhere. There isn't. Well, go with that. Look underneath there. It's on the dirt. That's all right.
Can't find the one.
This is a rubber hammerhead, and it isn't quite the right shape. It should be a little more conical.
Are you guys using it for that, job?
I don't see it.
There's one.
It's not the same one now. These are the little tricks.
Okay. There you have it.
There it is, sure.
Not first class.
He probably wouldn't approve it out of his shop.
I wouldn't approve it, but then. So well, this gives you an idea.
Right, the process.
Process, okay.
You wanna go upstairs and see it?
Well, I don't know that there's much really upstairs.
Well,
Well,
you
he's
got your
got-
whole, polishing operation, you got your,
Yeah.
Yeah.
coloring operation.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, what would happen to that thing right here?
Probably would put it in the hand of force over here.
They put black smoke on it.
Well,
in
you
order
put- you
to-
don't put
Right.
smoke on it, that's
Okay,
the
coal on it.
we build a fire in here. And then, have this operation where you put it on the screen and go through the fire at a certain time in the fire, and a certain level in the fire, and you can get a coating of coal tar on there. And then you take it off and you can polish it.
So this coal tar will stay in the crevices.
That's some old stuff that's been
Yeah.
around
That'll
about
give you a,
some of the older
Yeah, it,
things he doesn't like.
it gets all on there and then you have to
Most
take
shittiest
it
guy he
off.
ever made.
But at least he's stuff that he
Yeah, yeah.
And I see here's another part of the operation. When we made handles, and I had extrusions made, and then this would fit over the and make handles.
Were they made by Alcoa too?
Yeah, well, you could get. I had Alcoa as part of the time too. You have extrusion shop.
There's some stuff there.
You'd have this after you,
Dad? Dad?
yeah,
Sit back down on it. He wanted to take a picture of you there.
hold just a minute till I see how we're coming here, because we want to do a little bit better. I went too fast on this, because you have to take the, put the wax on and
What was this area?
Polishing.
So you put cold tar on it and then you polish it?
And the black
Once you got it in, you can't get it out.
And you get the three-dimensional.
There you go.
And then, what, that's also polishing?
Yeah, so I can spin the stuff that's spinning the box.
you're in my way.
Oh, good.
I don't have any wax here today. But we would take the part of the color off and wax it. And get, leave the black in the, where you say, around the edges.
Right in the crevices.
Yeah, in the crevices. This has got some wax on it, that's the reason I'm... Then you can come back over here and put the final polish on. See, I'm doing this when I don't know that I've ever done this before in my life.
Jimmy Vincent.
The jig actually in production. Probably the wrong one. One of them's all-
There you go. Now you can. There you go. Okay. There you go. That would be one specialty, or not special, a specific way to do one product. You know, other
Right.
products are finished other ways.
Gotta get it clear off to do that one.
Grandpa, where did you do the dye? Where did you do your dyes?
I would do those downstairs, I can show you that. We missed that whole operation.
Right.
Understand it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
This is the area where he do his finishing, but also this was the packing room over here, the packing room over there, and this was the bathroom.
What are you
And,
doing in there, Dad?
The bathroom and the kind of a inventory room. This is kind of evolved.
What are you searching for?
See whatever might be here.
So when you would be doing, say you would set up on Monday morning and you were gonna do this pattern, would you do one pattern all day, everyone working on it, each doing one step of it?
Well, that was just part of laying out what you're working, with your orders and everything.
Right.
But I'd probably make 100 of those. But the man would do I'd give him the job of making the 100 in the reef setting.
Right.
And then
He closed the shop one day
I
and
would
walked
take,
away.
in this
No.
particular
It's
case,
funny. All the sawdust and...
since I wouldn't cut this out by hand, I cut it out with a punch. I had to go someplace else and do the punch work, and so I would do 100 or, well, just have like this of a box full. See?
Right.
then, another man would do this work because he was more skillful than I, you see.
Right.
And he did that work, and he would do the edge work, and then another man would form them.
So, but when you would be making this product, would everyone in the shop be working on the same product?
No.
Very different parts of the same product?
No, we would, I would give the order, write up the order for the man who was putting the solder on. So he'd make 100 of these, and then he'd go to something else, and he would stack them there, and then the next man would take a hold of them, maybe not the same day, maybe the next day.
Okay.
See? But the process would go along.
So it wasn't really like an assembly line?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't assembly line. You had aspects of the assembly line.
Oh, wow,
Right.
look at the minimum
Now, you could have one. You could do something like I did today, and it would be a man would hammer the pattern and do the edge and do the form it, and then would come up and make a fire, and then he'd get polish them. See.
Right.
But I had a different man do all the different aspects of the different operations.
So when everybody else was tailorizing their fabrication process, how did you, what did you do?
When they were doing what was it?
They're tailorizing, you know, when they would, with assembly line, you know.
Oh, assembly line.
Right.
Well, I say you have to, if you did it like I did today, you could, the bottom line, it wouldn't work. You had to make them in
So
a group.
what happened in time was that other people started making these products, and they did it a little differently,
Right.
so that it would be more rapid. They began to,
Right.
they would roll press them. They wouldn't hand make them.
Right.
That's what happened in the industry as it developed, maybe towards the late, early 40s before the war, and then right after the war, all these people got back into it,
Right.
and they started pushing out this stuff that wasn't handmade. And I think your question to Dad, if you listen to this, Dad, what did you do differently than all these other people who tried to mass produce the stuff?
Well, I had to use techniques to stay in business. You just have to.
Well, how did you keep pace? You know, if they could produce whatever, they could produce 100 of these in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it would take you, say, all day. How could you keep pace?
Well, because what they didn't do is people could tell the difference in the product.
That's a great answer. That's the right answer. And yours cost more, I bet, too.
Well,
Not
you
had to
see I have
cost
low overhead?
Yeah,
That's the way I did it too.
yeah. Well, you must have, your workers, these guys, they must have had some reason to stay, right? You must have paid them a little bit more, or some more, than the guys that worked, say, wherever.
Well,
Kensington,
you see,
wherever.
when I started out, it was a depression. Everybody wanted a job. You
Sure.
could have men like crazy.
Right.
But the man who was the second man I ever hired, retired when I retired. And he came to me, he says, I want to work for you because you do good work. And he was an excellent craftsman. But he worked for me all that time, and we were good friends. Today, we're good friends.
How would the wages that you pay compare to some other kind of, skilled work that, say, around the war, around World War II?
Well, when I started working, I worked for 35 cents an hour. And after the war, $1 an hour was good money.
Right.
I don't know what the men make today, but I never made anything piecework. I maintained the standard, and I demanded that the standard would be kept up, because if you go to piecework, then you have a tendency to cut the standard.
right.
You gotta have inspection, all those things. And
So you always just paid an hourly wage.
I always went with an hourly wage. And
And you're always non-union.
no,
shop.
no non-union, no medical benefits. I would usually gave my men a bonus at the end of the year if we had a good year, but they didn't have vacations either.
They had no fringes.
You mean no paid vacation?
No paid vacations. Well, we used to take off after Christmas. We wouldn't work for an hour or for a week. Would probably be a pay for a week's work. See?
Right.
So that's about what we had. I'll be frank with you about anything else if you want.
Well, it's, you know, in an economy that was the post-war economy, I was here, I don't know Grove City, so I don't know what it was doing here. I know what it was doing in Pittsburgh.
Yes. Well, you aren't old enough to really know.
Well, there's different kinds of
Yeah,
knowledge.
but yeah, you also know from history.
Right. Well, I also know from my parents, too.
Yeah, okay.
And there were a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
There was wages were rising.
And the men that I hired were young men, and I trained them.
Oh, you trained them yourself.
Yeah, with yes, just on the job training.
What did
Now
they-
this first man that worked for me, he worked for Wendell August, and he was a skilled man. But a lot of the operations are operations that I designed. In other words, you saw me using a steel form down there. That was original with me to use a steel form, because those wood forms, I started with the wood form, but you see how they were all chewed up? And I went to, so you went to steel forms, and that idea of the clamp, the screw,
Right.
and well, just all kinds of things you have to be able to make it a little quicker. And
Yeah.
first we had those handles were made out of, you take 3 pieces to make a handle. You had a bar and the straps around the top. Well, then I went with extrusions and would make the handle on the extrusions and set the clamp this on with pressure, and it was much cheaper, but it was also a better I thought it was a better design.
You had a bending jig over here that you designed, and one of the few
Well,
kind
that
of
was
jigs you made.
Well, that was a bending jig because it was so along the line. I was making a tray with
This was also his retail store.
I didn't
Believe it or
have any
not.
retail store really.
Huh?
Where was that, downstairs?
Right there. In other words, people would come here, come up through this operation, come here
Okay.
and buy right at this spot.
Wow.
And they liked the experience of coming into a store. And for many years, my grandfather, in other words, my dad's father,
Uh-huh.
worked here, selling and wrapping. This was the wrapping packaging place.
Right.
And
One of the things.
he was an old man. I mean, he was in his 80s, and he would work here, talk to the customers, and sell.
Uh-huh. That's interesting, because one of the things that my research for exhibit, I'm doing the earlier period, so the 1780s, 1790s, and one of the things we're thinking about doing is doing an artisan workshop. And it's very similar.
Sure, it
Things
seems very
are
similar.
changing. Literally right across the street,
Yeah.
and the stores are done.
Well,
Things have changed.
This is basically what this thing is. It's an artisan's workshop with all the clutter and all the stuff. But
Gets to stop. Okay.
you just walked out.
So when did you think about that?
It's starting in 76.
I saw calendar down from 276.
Yeah, that was his last year.
Oh, theoretically, this should be at right angles.
Gives you the context.
Oh, okay.
Just go on like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on to the whole thing, Dad. Hang on to it.
But he had to like.
Then I had an extrusion to go.
So we not only bent it, we just put this on it too, right? It's
No.
beading?
No.
When we did
No,
that,
that-
did we put this beading on
No,
here?
no, that was done on there before.
Oh, that was done there before, okay.
That was, see here, so
So.
Oh, okay.
that's hammered.
Okay, I didn't
Stuff right here.
see that face.
Yeah, well, that was downstairs, you'll see that downstairs. And, then the handles,
There's one over there, Dad. There.
one that's anodized.
After he stopped.
That's how it would go together.
And that covers the seam between the
Right.
two pieces too.
That covers the seam between the two pieces.
Half plate.
This was something that I produced afterwards.
Yeah.
This was after the war. He thought of this during the war. Really, he's in the industry of hammered aluminum.
Well,
He was the only one that did the extrusion.
You can see out of it, sure.
Only one that did the extrusion process and making edges and handles like that, where they interface together.
I guess it was Alcoa developed it. I got the dyes originally from Alcoa, but then subsequently
Yeah.
they didn't want to
Yeah, but.
really do the extrusions, so there's a lot of companies that do extrusions. So
Collection is.
I got that done in Youngstown. It was a lot of Greenville too. I don't know how important this is.
Probably been hanging.
This is one of the things that you work out, you make.
Kind of ordered
There's how much contact did you have with people at Alcoa? I mean, would they ever, would you have contact with them about, say, you said you needed special alloys.
Yes.
How would you work out with them, the alloys that you needed? Who would just make the decision? as to
Well,
how
you
to
see,
do it?
they had a finishing
this kind of stuff, you know, if you're doing period.
man, a laboratory down in Kennington.
Yeah.
And this man, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name because he was a good friend of mine. He befriended me and he said, come on down and now this is when I was working with the anodizing process. Come on down and we can work together. And he let me have his men and I would boss them and tell them what I wanted. And we would anodize. Well, he said, we had a problem with the anodizing because when you anodize something, it's like a photographic process, and it brings out all of the structural streaks in the material. It's like development, see? And this was unsatisfactory. So he said the way that you can overcome this, I think, is we have an experimental metal here, which is a clad sheet. And so you have the clad sheet, which has more pure aluminum on each side. It's a 10%. And we have an X number, and you order it, and I will, and you can use it. So that's, he told me what to use, and I made a sample line and broke it down. He anodized it for me, and I sent it to New York for a sample to sell from. So he really was a big help for me.
About when would that be? About what year might that be?
Well, that would be right after the war.
Well, it was more 56-ish. It wasn't right after the war.
Well, no, it wasn't right after the war.
No, because you got into the anodizing in 1956.
Okay.
So it would be prior, the
Just
early
prior to
50s. That's when he was working with that. And that was the thing that enabled him to survive.
But this sheet is a clad sheet. And it's a special sheet that I had to have made at the mill. It was because of his anodizing. It's the same metal, which is pure aluminum in the soft alloy. You had half soft, half hard, and hard. And I would get it soft because then when you hammered,
Right.
you had work hardens, see, it begins harder. gets harder anyway. See, that's pretty
Almost like
soft.
it's compacted.
Well, it's,
The hammering?
no, it's tensions that you set up in it.
Oh, because of the shape.
What of the hammering?
Right.
Squeezing the
And
molecules.
A lot of the problems is that when you make a big sheet and it's, well, a big sheet, I mean a sheet like this, a tray, then it's all crooked. And so you have to distribute, there's strains in that aluminum, and you hammer it with a rubber hammer, and you could, if you can imagine, you can see the strains in there equalizing. And you can equalize them, and so to get it flat.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. The, I wanted to ask you about the anodized aluminum that you were using. Were they making that at the mill in New Kensington also?
Oh, they didn't make it at the mill in Kennington. They made it in the mill somewhere else. I don't think they ever made clad sheet in West Kennington. Although Kennington Ware was a clad sheet, I think. I'm not sure what it was.
I don't know how much of that process they actually did in New Kensington though.
Well, they actually made the pieces there because they made it right there where I was working. I could see them making it.
Really?
And they made the pieces, but the aluminum they used to make for the
Right.
they made that someplace else.
The finished pieces.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where they anodized them. I don't know where they anodized them because that was an experimental area there.
Well, in terms of
anodizing
just the actual material, the aluminum to start with, where'd they make it? The clad aluminum.
Well, they were moving from New Kensington. They had some mills still in New Kensington. They had a sheet mill there.
Yeah, that's what I know. There was a sheet mill.
Yeah.
There, and I just didn't know. I don't know whether they did anodizing there or not.
Well, they had this research anodizing,
Right.
but I don't think they had an anodizing line there. You know, by a line, I mean a
Sure.
production line.
Right. Actually, I grew up in New Kensington.
Oh.
And so I know a little bit about it.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the people in my neighborhood
Worked.
worked in Alcoa, either in the mill. On the end of the street I lived on was people who worked in the mill, and
Yeah.
on the other end of the street were the bigger houses where people in the research facility worked.
Oh, I
But
see.
almost everybody worked at Alcoa. My father didn't, but almost everyone else in the neighborhood did. And
Do you find this interesting?
I think it's really fascinating. I also think that the patterns themselves, I wanted to know more about them, and where did you do those?
Well, I did them downstairs. Let's go downstairs.
Okay. Sure. Is that where you would?
Well, I would draw them at home.
Okay, that was my first question. Where
Yeah.
do you start when you're going
Well,
to do something?
I would do it upstairs
Okay.
and home.
Uh-huh.
And I would.
Peek in here. This is what he called his handle room.
You see, I'm
Where you
still
put handles
turn
on
out
it.
lights. People don't turn out lights anymore, but I turn out lights.
This was his handle room, working, put the handles on the trays, things. He would do that in here.
Well, I didn't do it as quickly as it should have been done. I would say you ought to make it in half that time.
Really?
That's at least. Now. Yeah, come on down now. Since I was always
It's fun, isn't it?
supervisor,
Huh?
I
It's
was-
fun, isn't it?
Dig into that.
There's some trays and stuff in there that are brand new, you know, never come out of that.
Yeah, there's several of them.
Yeah.
I was sitting there pretty much right here and cut my die. You see that I have a turntable here.
Right.
So I sit here. And there's the tools. I would sit here and cut it, and of course as I got older I needed a loop.
Right.
Are you familiar with the loop?
Yeah, I know what a jeweler's loop is.
Well, it's the same, it's
Right.
the same type of thing, except jewelry puts it in one of these eye hangers. This gives you both eyes, and and you have it,
Where's the light switch to that stairway light?
Clear up at the top. Just pull the chain. You gotta go back to the
Yeah.
top.
Here?
Top of the stairs. Clear to the top.
How would you, when you were about to start the engraving process, how would you put the image?
well, I had it on a piece of the tracing paper, and I would put,
Just pull. I wanna get something out.
Okay, is it going?
Copper
Yeah, just
sulfate.
go through here.
Are you,
Yeah.
you know what copper sulfate is? There's the copper sulfate is a blue, they call it bluestone too. It's
Very hard work.
it's well, it's copper sulfate, and it'll dissolve in water.
Right.
And when you put it on here, on the steel, it will precipitate copper. So you have a copper coating on here that tracing paper will show up on. So I would take a point and go around on my pattern, and I would transfer the pattern onto the steel. But when you get, as soon as you start cutting the die, you lose everything but the outline.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is when you originally transferred on here, it's really almost a cartoon.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's you don't get into any real detail
get any
because you're going to
details.
lose it anyway when you.
And this is one of the things that in all my patterns, I differ from some other people. That to me, to have a satisfactory and interesting pattern was from the outline was the important thing. It wasn't the detail inside, it was the outside. And see, this has
So there's more detail than I imagined.
well, there isn't any interior detail, virtually.
Right. It's all
Push it a little.
Well, you see,
Which
when you
one?
get into the things like
Put your hand in here.
the roof here, you
other hand.
you have
Put
to,
your other
you get
hand.
down,
put it
every
in
time you
this.
go down, you lose
Oh,
everything.
scrap. I see
And then
that.
there's two buttons.
you were just saying that you
Okay.
And one
Yeah.
goes
For you,
forward and one goes backwards.
Aesthetically,
See?
it's the outline that.
Yeah,
No,
well,
the other one.
your drawing which
Two
kills
buttons.
in the end.
Well, that's what
Okay.
I was getting is the intersection of
Okay, I'm going forward.
technique and your interest, and also then the effect that you end up with.
Sure, you just,
They're married.
and you can, what you can do is, as you go along, now this is a poor example because it's almost all outline, but you could, if you were in a place here where you have a limb behind the other limb,
Right.
you can take a piece of metal and take it and hammer it and look at it and see what you've got. If you aren't satisfied, well, then you can cut one deeper. So actually, what you do is, well, you have to have that piece coming in here, and you fudge a little bit to make it so that it goes behind, but you don't get deep. If you put this behind there, it would have to be way down deeper to actually be
Right.
behind, see?
Mhm. Right, I understand.
So, this is a good example of having outline, where you take, well, this one over here, you see, you've got all this interior detail, and if you're, as soon as you cut it, if you cut down this level and then you have to cut down this level to go farther, you're in trouble because you're getting too deep. So you fudge it, of course, to start pretty much up here and take it down on a slab and make the next one in a slope. And well, that's just die cutting, and
Right.
that's a whole different thing of itself.
You know, whenever I think of Art Deco, I always think of horses.
Yeah.
And there's the obvious, the parallel lines and all those sort of things. But the horses, and I saw a lot of horses
Yes.
at your house.
Yes.
And also the Japanese horses too.
Yes.
And the relationship between those, is really the idea of line and form. And the line, and this is totally different though.
Yes.
This is a totally different approach to it. And
Well, you have the third dimension. It's the third dimension
Right.
where you get into.
The whole reef estate is the third dimension, but it's a combination of the third dimension and the outline. The outline is, to me, is very important because that determines the pattern, especially when you put the color on it.
were there some images or subjects, maybe, was a better word? That
Yeah, subject's good.
That just aren't suitable for this kind of work?
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Now, some people get skilled at representation because if you take a coin, you have the same problems on coins.
Right.
And now here's a good example of the building. You see, there's this Monticello is well. The thing that's interesting there is really the outline and the detail in there. And this is not a good subject.
Right.
Not a good subject for a coin.
Right. A bit of like a profile.
Like the profile.
Right.
Now, if you put a full view, face view, you're in trouble.
Can't tell who it is. Can't tell.
Well, you can do it, but
yeah,
you
won't
have
be able to recognize them the same way you could with the
there,
profile.
yeah. You get a 3/4.
Yeah.
But if you get a direct profile, you're in trouble. So the subject, I don't think buildings are a good subject, but there's some skillful die cutters can make a building look pretty good, and especially if you're trying to sell to somebody who wants to represent their building. See?
Right. Right. I mean, something like a village church.
Yeah.
It's the silhouette that tells you it's a church in the first place.
Yeah, it's a silhouette and it's relatively simple.
You never did any buildings, did you?
Because you see, you got a 3/4 view, but you have almost head-on view of the windowed area in there.
Right.
And you got the tower and everything. Well, here you're. This should, of course, become deep in, be real deep in there. But it's a combination of sketching and
Right.
it's just a combination of both. This, I think, comes out very well.
Oh, it does.
But you see, it's a fudge.
Yeah, well, it's not meant to represent St. John's Church and
No,
it's
you
a
can't.
village
Yeah.
church. And
Well,
so
then
it's just
you come over here. Now you've got something farther back, and you have a barn back here.
Right.
Well, see all these, like these lines, I would cut these lines with, start out with a tool like, tool like this,
Over here, on the
which
basement.
you come around
These were all upstairs. Have them somewhere.
like
I
this.
think he had
come
them in the
around
plow drawers
and
out in
so
the shop.
going down like that, and then you take a wide tool with like this, and you make it come out to nothing.
Right.
Well, then, so this is far back. You're using the idea of perspective in there. Then you come up here and you've got to put them all behind this tree.
Right.
So you just have little technical details all the time. And if you're successful, you can do it, but I would say things with perspective like this, you have one problem where you have a pattern which is, well, like my sundial or zodiac or something like that, where you have all one level.
One plane.
It's really the outline that counts. But you have to. Well, one of the reasons you have a turntable is because you have to
approach.
Yeah, yeah. Have the approach change all the time. Now, with that loop, why you work between your eye and you have to have room for your tool and your hand between your focal length on your loop, so that I think it's 10 inches that's set up for. So you have 10 inches to work in there between your eye and
Right.
your and the plate.
The field.
Yeah. You can get a little loop with a different focus on it, but this, I think that's, I don't see what it says on here, but that's what it is, I'm almost sure.
One of the things he did do was kept his guys shallow just to compare to other people.
Well, if you're making something for a tray, it's got to be shallow in the end, or you've got,
Right.
you see, you just can't put any height. And this is for use. But if you're making something for decoration, you put on the wall, then you can get that third dimension in there, and it doesn't give you the problem with setting something on top of it. So I try to keep my dies shallow. Well, you try to keep your dies shallow for two reasons too. One is that you've got to form the metal into it. Now this is 14 gauge, but if you take metal that's twice that thick, it's easier to force it in there. See.
Right.
And of course, the softer the metal is, the easier you can form it in there too.
What about the final finish? No, this has you put the coal tar onto it,
Yeah.
but you remove most of that. That must
Yeah.
be still some kind of oil or something.
Well, it's wax.
Well, then you put
Canava wax.
Okay.
I put some on. I just had it on a cloth up there.
And then there's no other finish after that?
No other finish. That.
What, and how...
Now, if you're using bronze or something, it's going to have get a dark anodized or a dark oxidized on there. Why then those pieces are lacquered, or some people even lacquer silver.
Because I've seen these with stains. Some of the aluminum with stains. I just didn't know whether...
With the stains?
I mean stain from, I don't mean like I mean like something was spilled on it.
Oh, well, you see, aluminum reacts with an alkali. As you can put acid in this and it doesn't do anything to it. You put alkali on it and it just eats it right up. And if you get, especially things from the ground, where you have alkali in it, then it eats right into the surface, and you can see in these older pieces where you have it eaten in. It's corroded, actually.
Speaking of somebody actually trying to put some kind of a color finish on it, is that what you're talking about?
No, actually, I saw a tray at a flea market, and it had a discoloration in one portion of it, which made me think that something was spilled on it, or...
It might have been white. The discoloration might go in the direction of being white, too. See, the oxide of aluminum is white.
Yeah, it almost looked cloudy.
Cloudy, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's oxidation. And that's what, in a sense, what the anodized, when you get into that, it gives you a protective finish. In fact, it is oxidizing it. That's what anodizing does.
It's an aging finish put on fast by electricity is actually what anodizing is. It's a fast aging of the aluminum with electrical process, and that is hard. In fact, it's one of the hardest substances known, is aluminum oxide. They use, your paper, you have aluminum oxide paper. It's made, the grid is aluminum oxide on there. You have some are carborundum, some aluminum oxide. I don't know whether
These, like the marks on here, I don't know if you can see that from the angle you're looking, that's like an abrasion though, right?
Well,
see how
there's two things that we're talking about here. Now that's rust on there and that's pitted.
Right, but then this discolored, see how this is shinier, or actually duller there.
Well,
Is
you
that-
see, when you get aluminum and you hit it with the hammer, it expands and it slides. And when it slides on the steel,
Right.
it makes aluminum oxide. And so we would have what you would call, maybe we can say it here a little better. It would be a, oh, it isn't any on there. It'd be a thing we call the blue mark, and you have to remove it. So you remove it with abrasive. Now, I'm trying to be fairly careful with this,
Right.
because as soon as you clean your die, you start to destroy it, because the minute you hit this edge, which is the thing that holds the dark at the end and gives it, is determined by this edge right here.
You round that edge.
Yeah, and as soon as you round that edge off, you're in trouble. And everything happens, well, you can see that that's rounded off.
Right. So when you hammer this, what you're doing is actually you're creating a different kind of surface in the...
Where the hammer mark is, you mean?
Well, in various parts of the hammer mark even. Like the deeper part of the hammer mark is going to have a different, essentially, texture than the rim of the
Well, it
hammer
would
mark.
be when you first make it, but by the
Right.
time you work it afterwards, see, I miss an area which we always miss in there, is if you take a piece that you repassé and
That was his first die.
have you got anything around here that's repassé to flats and? Okay. Well, this, you might. You get a surface like this and put it through the fire and put the wax on. It has a, well, it takes away the, well, I say the cheap shine, or the, it gives it a texture.
Yeah.
So everything is textured by an abrasive too, on a flat piece.
Plywood up there.
But on those small pieces like that, well, you have a problem if you're gonna, if you're going to put an abrasive off, why don't you determine a direction it goes, and then you have to polish it in the same direction that you abraded.
Right, right.
And if you are going to put it in a lathe and spin it,
It's all going to be the same way.
it's all going to be the same way. And if you put abrasive across it and then spin it, you're in trouble, see?
Yeah.
So sometimes, some of the pieces, at one time we would sand them in the lathe, and sand them in a circular, and braid them in a circular fashion, and then you could polish them in a circular fashion. But,
I think we're at kind of at a, when you've got a whole picture of things,
Right now.
What's going on. If you you want to take some more pictures of anything.
How are we doing on time?
Doing fine.
Quarter after
Okay.
12. So
see, this is
I mean,
this is a silicon carbide abrasive there, but and then you see this white area in there. That's a lubricant that they put in when they manufactured the thing, so that if you sand aluminum, just get me a piece of aluminum, son. Just a piece unanodized or unhammered. This man is interested in these things.
Design stuff.
Well, he's interested in everything. If you sand that,
Right.
pretty soon we say you start to burn it,
Right.
and it gets white. Now, if you have a lubricant in the paper, you don't do it as fast, and because we put a little lubricant on there, which is really a mineral spirits and sand that, why then you can take out a place that burned, you get a different finish on there.
I see.
But if you get away from your, dig it into it, pretty soon you've got a spot that, well, it won't blend in. But if you put some lubricant on it, it'll begin to blend in. I don't know that you can follow what I'm telling you, but...
Oh, I understand what you mean.
You do? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Good for you. But that's what would go into the fire normally on all our pieces, except those small ones, see?
Right.
It would be like that. And then, of course, and this is one of the sad things that you have, if you have dust and dirt around here and you reach it, you're going to have a hole in there.
Right.
And then if you have a place that's is a bad hole, then you got to take the hole out. Well, you can take the hole out because you make a depression in there, but the depression goes right in with the hammered effect, so you can take out it. But if you do that, that's where you lose your shirt, because that takes time
To go back over.
Yeah, you don't do that. Stay away from getting holes in there. And that's the reason that you saw me over there when I was hammering and shoot air across. Keeps the dust off, you see.
One thing we
And that's something that we did, which most everybody else has done away with. Give me that piece of metal that I was working on over there. And now you can whack it. Take the that away. I'm out of sync there, you see? I will try it again. Well, this is so flat. That's right. Well, still isn't out. Yeah, that's right. And that was a tool that and you have to make the space on when you buy the tool. It's square, you have to make that space. And there were so many problems we had. We have what happened. Feel simplified, right? In fact, the matter is, the end will go right through there.
One good whack.
Teeny.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
But there's the one that broke the camel's back.
That's the one from Cal. This one I had, I had to throw the end away, but on this one, which was a good anvil, I had a man who thought he could weld it, and he did weld it in his hole. But that wasn't easy to weld it. But I worked with the company that made these things, and they made cheap ones that they would sell in stores. That would be like this.
What they use those things for when they were selling them?
They were used in the railroad. They used them in the railroad, and I don't know what they would do. And the second, the gangs had used it.
And you took it and modified it for your...
Oh yeah, that's modified. It really is what is called a flattening tool, and I think they used, the blacksmith used them to take out the hammer marks and make them more flat. Do you have in your blacksmith shop, do you have anything?
I don't know.
But this,
One of the things that we haven't mentioned is the technological change that happened in this business. You've seen the same aluminum process, but in the 1950s or so, aluminum didn't sell very well. And so we had to come up with a different technique and we went into what's called anodizing.
Yeah, we talked briefly about
Okay.
anodizing upstairs.
Okay, but then you had to get this stuff real clean. And so this thing over here was a tank to dip stuff in, get it clean before you would anodize it. So they process it.
no, you're talking two different things,
Or the
two different tanks. There's the tank, there's the greasy tank, which
Yeah.
they have a chemical that if you heat it, and when you heat it, it makes a fog, and you put a cold piece of aluminum in, then it condenses on it and just runs off and cleans it.
Almost like flux.
Not the flux, actually it's a washing operation. And of course it makes the piece hot. When you take it out, the piece is hot. Well, we used that for a while, but sometimes when you buffed it, if you had buffed it, which we had a buffing operation, and you would have the compound, well, you have the grit in what's sheep's fat called?
Tallow?
Huh?
Tallow?
Lanolin.
No,
Lanolin.
Lanolin, yeah, lanolin, that's right. Where you would take out the grit and the lanolin would, well, I don't know what happened, but you'd bake some of the stuff off. What didn't wash off,
Baked on.
you baked on. So subsequently, we just did away with that operation and washed everything in mineral spirits, and you didn't get it real clean, but you didn't have any of that problem of baking stuff on, because in the anodizing process, the first tank they put it in would be what they called a soak tanker, which was a cleaning tank, and then you put it into this edge tank, and that cleaned it off like crazy.
So you didn't use this tank at all after a while?
No, I discontinued that tank entirely and went to the other operation, which didn't make it as clean.
You see how conservative is, the tank's still sitting there.
But then the other tank is where I did have the lye in it, and you could strip the anodize off.
Strip the anodize off.
Oh yeah, you didn't truly strip, you just ate it with.
To a certain song.
Yeah, you edged it. You just ate it up.
The,
Ask any questions.
I'm running out of them for a minute. One thing I did want to talk about, maybe we can find a way to talk about this again today. I wanted to talk again about the workforce, about the guys who work
Oh
here.
yeah.
Here's an interesting thing about the workforce.
Uh-huh.
I was looking at this stuff. Now, why would we find a book here on eating lamb, wool, and stuff? It's because the guy who did the pounding was a farmer who raised lamb and sheep and showed them. And this was kind of I don't know which was his primary job and which was his secondary job.
I don't think he ever knew.
Yeah, but this guy worked here for years.
And he, in fact, he worked when he came in at his own time.
Yeah, he was kind of flexible on his time. And right here is the stuff, this is where he worked. And, you know, here's the stuff that relates to that particular workman
Right.
who's still alive. And he was
Still
showing
alive.
sheep and that kind of stuff. So
One time we went and stuffed wool in bags.
yes, the one time we went and
Huge bags. And it was big, and you just got down in it and stamped on it.
they were having a sheep wool sale, and he needed some temporary help, and my brother and I went and worked for a few days for him. So, but that's something about the workforce, just a little bit.
Well, I think that's different.
But you did have a number of people who were part-time like that.
Well,
you
the
know,
guy that paused, Jimmy, he became a pattern maker at the Cooper.
at the local.
And he went through an apprenticeship and became a pattern maker. But he'd come in and work for me in the evening because he liked it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that it was different if there, I don't know where else there would have been to work doing production or technical work in Grove City. Was there
There's
a,
another operation that makes aluminum still here.
Oh, well, yeah, sure, there's another operation. The place where it really started, I worked there myself for 9 months, I guess.
Wendell?
Wendell August.
I didn't work in the shop. I worked in the drawing and drafting area, or did some drawings. He didn't have any drafting area. But I didn't work out in the shop. But I'm a fast learner.
But there were other kinds of jobs in Grove City, other
Well, yeah.
technical jobs. I mean,
Well, you had the Cooper, the Cooper, Bessemer. The Bessemer was at that time where they made diesel engines.
Big diesel.
oh well, that was here in Grove City.
Oh
It's
yes,
still
we'll
here.
go past
It's
it
still
on the
next
way
to
out.
it.
That's the place we passed when we came in, and I wasn't sure what they did. I knew it was something to do with steel and trains.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Cooper.
Cooper.
Industry.
That was we had a brass and bronze foundry. We had an iron foundry,
Nordstrom's had a machine job.
and had a couple of machine shops, independent machine shops. I guess that was about all there was around here.
And the people you would hire, the guys you would hire, would they be?
Probably the sons of people who work in the other buildings.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And they would be like fresh out of high school, or
Oh, yeah.
before they finished high school.
Oh no,
You
fresh
had
out of
some high school kids who worked here.
Well,
particularly
Jimmy
officials.
worked for me when he was 13. He's a kid.
That Bogan kid, he was in high school.
Yeah, he was nice.
And did they have like technical or vocational, what they call vocational training
Oh
in
no,
high
they
school?
didn't have any vocation.
They
No?
didn't have those things.
They're just either, of course, Wendell August, they hired a lot of, and imported a lot of Italians who were normally into blacksmithing, that sort of
Yeah,
thing. See,
yeah.
they were skilled in that.
Right.
Now,
Did you hire Italians or?
well, the first guy I had was an Italian, yes.
Uh-huh.
He, but after that, you got these Scots-Irish.
Was that
Yeah.
the
Oh,
Ponce?
terrible.
That was Ifanso. Yeah.
You had a strike once, didn't you?
That's what he.
Well,
Very brief one.
yeah, I had a brief strike because I didn't pay overtime.
Yeah, and the feds got you or something, didn't they? Or not? Didn't you get caught on that?
Well, I got caught on that.
Didn't pay overtime rate.
Yeah,
For
you pay time and a half.
Yeah. Because when we started to work here, it was the Depression time, and our standard work week was 50 hours a week, 9 hours a day, and 5 hours on
Half
Saturday.
day Saturday.
Half day Saturday.
You worked that all your life, really?
Yeah, well, I worked that. Together with the evening.
Yeah,
Just to round out
he,
the
he,
day.
nor- he normally worked every evening, except Wednesday, which he went to prayer meeting, from 8 to 10. He worked 2 hours every night,
Yeah.
and then half a day Saturday.
Yeah, I always worked half a day Saturday, but then we took Saturday off, and,
Took Saturday
and
afternoon off.
I think that I ought to, at this point, will you put the input of your mother?
Yeah. See, my mother was the business manager, or the,
And our office was our home.
yeah, she ran the books and did all the office work, and that was done in our house, or as we'll see when we go back, when we build a garage, they build an office
Right.
as an attachment on the garage. And so Mother did all the paperwork, you know, this payroll, the billings, the ordering, and all that stuff.
She had been an attorney's secretary. And she had a business, 2-year business
Yeah,
education.
and that was an important point, because he's more the artist production type, and
Right.
a lot of times these businesses fall apart because they don't
Precisely.
have the billing and the
Right.
the record keeping component, but they made a very good team and made this business go. When you look at it, I look at it from kind of perspective, probably what they got out of it was their wages. You know,
I know. Right.
I think they probably got their wages out of it because they worked a lot of hours. And even though you might be an entrepreneur or a businessman, I think you probably got your wages out. But by having the other people work for you, you know, it made the whole thing possible.
I understand.
But,
Yeah, I had a business for 8 years, and that's about what I got out of it, was wages.
and he did
But
what he
you're
wanted.
your own boss.
But he,
Yeah, I was my own boss, that's true.
It's wonderful.
And I got to work my own hours,
Yeah.
from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed.
And and when you make a mistake, you pay for it.
Yeah, yeah.
for a short time, you know, a few years in his life during World War II, he had to work for somebody else.
Yeah.
And my mother loved that because he always came home at regular times and stuff
Right.
like that, and didn't have to work nights and all that.
Well, that probably also reduced her work, too.
Yeah, and she
wasn't
didn't
doing
have to work,
paperwork
and
for
she didn't
the
have to do all
business.
that stuff,
Right.
but he hated it.
In fact, I worked during the war. I had to commute, so I would live in the darkness
Yeah,
and
you
get
had to
home in the
drive quite
darkness.
long.
To where?
Up at there was a place in Shenango. I don't know.
Reynolds, Camp Reynolds.
Camp Reynolds.
It would be 25 miles, 30 miles from here.
New
Toward the other
Castle?
end of the county, right on the,
Up near,
up towards Greenville.
It's a temporary.
There's Sharon and there's Greenville, and in between is this
Okay.
Reynolds, Camp
Greenville's
Reynolds.
north.
And it was military. What do they do for the military? What do they do there?
Well, I
Was it
think
munitions
I
plant?
don't know the name, but it was something where they brought people in and then would ship them out. Just
transshipment.
transship.
I remember going there one time at the end of the war, and there were German prisoners there.
Yeah, and they had a prisoner, a German
I
prisoner.
remember
camp.
going there and seeing the
It
German
was
prisoners.
a temporary.
Transshipment place or something.
They have some name that to it that doesn't sound like what it actually is. It's a replacement. Your replacement for the guys that are killed. That's
Oh.
what it was called, a replacement center.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when they call for more people because you lost a lot of people in the last battle.
There they go.
Well, anything else you want to gather from here? Or anything?
Well, actually, what I would like to do is, after we've had lunch, I
Yeah.
think I'd want to come back here. And we want to do take some more photographs. I'm going to take some notes on and also I hope, we bring a tape measure?
Oh,
You have a tape measure?
We'll have
Okay.
it, yeah.
I'd like to get some just approximate dimensions of some of things. So
Yeah,
that,
you want to know what area you have for display.
Or
Right.
what it takes.
Right. And so, you know, we could, now that we understand how these spaces work together, and what would happen at this station or at that station, we can begin to think about. I mean, I'm not going to be making any kind of decision on what we're going to take. It's just that I can go back with the information of say that there is right now the way this is laid out. There's a space that say this corner right here.
Yeah.
And this is what occurred in that corner. There's 2 workbenches. There's the engraving station right there. There's also this setup with the anvil, and that's approximately whatever it is, 75, 150 square feet. And we would also want to just get some numbers on the inside of this. This is divided into rooms upstairs.
Well,
And just,
Rough floor plan.
rough floor plan, an idea of how the operation works and what the spaces are and what kinds of things are in those spaces.
Okay.
And it's a starting point.
Yeah.
It's just a starting point, I
Right.
realize this.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we're willing to give you.
Okay, well, this is, you know, this is our first step.
Yeah.
You have your first step, you know, and
Yeah.
we will figure out
Yeah.
some way of doing this that makes everybody happy.
Yeah.
Well, if you can make everybody happy, you're a genius.
How about I can make everybody smile?
You're gonna have so people don't go away mad.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay, let's
That's
go
okay.
have lunch and then come back.
yeah,
I think so.
sounds good.
Oh, this is heavy.
The original die, cut in 1933, in the house on the back porch across the street. Smokestack from the forge within the window out of the handle room. Back entrance. See, this is the forge. Chimney from the forge. The other was the chimney from the furnace. The forge is in the room furthest away. Small building attached was for visuals. It's the visuals room. Looking in the shop. Forge smokestack. through the window before entering. Die cutting station. Tree dye, very popular dye. Very popular design. Hole punch. Hammer, tools of the trade. Ladders. Anvil. Vise. Repoussé table. Rose dye. Covered map. flattening device for flexing the aluminum. Flattening table. Shears for cutting the aluminum. Punch for punching 3-inch circles, 3.5-inch circles, 4-inch circles maybe. Bandsaw. Location of all the dies. Most popular dies. Dogwood. Rack beside the Repoussé table. Where he kept his trademarks, forms to mark how to make, or where to repoussé, old magazines. Great design. Repoussé table. We have the map design, which is bolted to the table. Therefore, it doesn't change very often. Very popular design. This is the map. Map of the world. These are special trademarks that were applied without my father's name for particular manufacturers to commemorate some special event or for a particular product. Metal Goods Products, Tioga Mills, and Dobbs. Dobbs, he made bread trays and put cheese in the bread trays and wrapped them up and gave them or sold them that way.